Thank you everyone for being here this evening. We'd like to welcome Kim Garrison-Means, who is our speaker this evening. Kim is a visual artist, writer, musician, and curator with an MFA in studio art from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. Starting in 2005, Kim and her husband, Leland Means, and several dedicated friends opened up her family home on 60 acres of patented mining claims in the East Mojave as the collaborative project Mystery Ranch, an art and science research station with an emphasis on local history and ecology.
Thanks, Brenda. I'm so excited to be here and get to talk to you guys tonight. I'll be talking about Avi Kwa Ame, the sacred land and ancient habitat that surrounds the town of Searchlight, Nevada, to the south of Las Vegas. And the Mystery Ranch that Brenda mentioned is there in that Avi Kwa Ame landscape. And so I'm excited to take you guys on a tour of this landscape. I'll hit some highlights of what's out there with some personal experiences, and then we'll highlight some of the cultural importance of this area and ecological importance. And then I'm going to back up and take you a bit through the process we've been going through in maintaining this area as an intact landscape and trying to protect it from industrial projects that get proposed for the area. And then that has taken us down a path where we are currently proposed to be Nevada's 4th national monument. So that's actually been a bill that was introduced by Dina Titus earlier this year. It's in Congress right now. And it's just waiting for somebody to sign into law, whether Congress or by presidential order of the Antiquities Act. So without further ado, let me share my screen. And if you're just joining us, if you would mute yourself once you get here, I'm gonna get right to it here. All right, everybody see that? Good, okay, no dissenters. All right, so I am really lucky to have grown up in this part of the East Mojave, just north of Searchlight, Nevada, which is about 50 miles south of Las Vegas and 50 miles north of Needles, California. This is the view from our property looking to the north. This overlooks the BLM public lands that right now are designated as part of the El Dorado Paiute Area of Critical Environmental Concern, or ACEC for short. This protects our intact population of the desert tortoise. And as you can see, this is an incredibly beautiful area. It's full of such a variety of species of plants, lots of little micro habitats here too. So I'm excited to get into talking to you about all of the great ecology. But before that, let's just give a nod to the town of Searchlight. If you've never been there before, Searchlight started as a mining town, boom town around 1900. And all through the 1900s and into the teens, it was a great, big, wonderful mining town, if you want to call those wonderful. It thought of itself as wonderful. It was larger than Las Vegas at the time. And mining and ranching were the main industries for the Searchlight area for quite a long period of time. Searchlight is also home just outside of town to the Walking Box Ranch. This was a huge cattle ranch that in the 1930s was purchased by the movie stars Rex Bell and Clara Bow and turned into sort of a Hollywood movie star working cattle ranch. It has persisted intact through the years. It just is getting the finishing touches of renovations as we speak. And it is a great place to visit that is now protected. There's a Friends of Walking Box Ranch, and in partnership with the BLM, it is open to the public for certain events. So check there. There's great stargazing events there. So another ranch that I love more personally is this place, which my grandparents built in the 1960s. And they called it Reynolds Ranch back then. Like Brenda said, it was on patented mining claims. And the structure of the house itself was actually built out of the salvaged timbers from a Searchlight stamp mill that was being dismantled in the 1960s. So it's a cool piece of Searchlight's history all its own. I started during my tenure in the 2000s, myself and my family opened this ranch up, and our goals at the time were that there weren't enough stories of this area of the desert and all of this beauty and magic that's out here. And we needed to invite the arts community, the storytellers around, to come and experience this place, because I was going to graduate school at UNLV at the time, and I was hearing from a lot of people that, you know, outside of Las Vegas was just this kind of wasteland. The desert was a wasteland. People's ideas about Nevada in general really were heavy on the wasteland myth. And but you know, when you get out here into this rich ecosystem, especially places that are very lush and, you know, mountainous, have a little more water, it's just the opposite. Some of the resources we have out here are bighorn sheep, deer, fox, badgers, eagles, hawks, and over 2,000 species of plants. So hoping to get people here to inspire stories just inspires us more, as you see, and I'm sure you know, when you bring people to Gold Butte, just seeing that place through other people's eyes, you know, makes you feel more inspired yourself. And years ago, when we first started doing this, we had this sculptor out, Jitka Havličková. She was from the Czech Republic, and she had never been to the US before. She'd never been to the desert, and she specifically said, I really need to go out and see the desert. So she got out here and she looked around at all this Joshua Tree forest and granite mountains, and she said to me, this is not desert. This is paradise. And wow, she was just so absolutely right. Look at this. This is just so stunning, this landscape. And the more we get to be in it, the more it works on us and teaches us. And that's the mystery that we're going for in that Mystery Ranch. So let's leave the Mystery Ranch now a little bit and talk about this area as a whole and what is being proposed for protection by way of national monument. So here we have a map. You can see that we're in southern Nevada, between Las Vegas and Laughlin, and this kind of convenient, delicious looking pie shape is between all of these protected lands in green in California that include the Castle Mountains National Monument, the Mojave National Preserve, various wilderness areas, everything's protected here. And then on the eastern side, by the Colorado River, we have the Lake Mead National Recreation Area, and everything is protected there. And then we have this pie shape here. And there have been some protections in the past, like I mentioned, that area of critical environmental concern that somewhat protects the area and has definitely had an impact on our environment. But if we look at another exciting slide, I apologize, there are many, many rainbow colors here. This is all still a work in progress, just to communicate all of these concepts here visually. But you can see these black areas within our pie-shaped monument map area. And all of these black areas are what are fondly known of as donut hole areas. And those donut hole areas are areas of unprotected BLM public lands that are completely surrounded by protected areas. And these are the areas that we've been most having problems with maintaining this landscape as a whole, because obviously a lot more things can happen on that unprotected BLM land. So in a little bit, we'll get into the journey of trying to keep this land intact. But first, let's look at some more highlights of this land here. Let's see, David, you have a question. Each map looked different. Yeah, that's true. Would Iriteba Peaks BLM Wilderness be included in the monument or not? I believe it's not included, but obviously it's adjacent. Some of these areas of wilderness are included. Weethump is entirely surrounded. It's my recollection that the Southern McCullough Wilderness is some or all included. And then I believe Iriteba Peaks, because it's right now managed by the National Park Service on the Lake Mead side, would not be included. But thankfully, I'm not totally the person writing the policy on that, so don't hold me to that. But that's my recollection on that. Okay, so the Mystery Ranch is up here, all that beautiful landscape you saw up here above Searchlight. And then down here is the part of the landscape that most people have heard of before, and that's Spirit Mountain. Spirit Mountain is here, and it's partially protected. The eastern side of Spirit Mountain is part of the Spirit Mountain Wilderness, but the western side of the mountain remains unprotected BLM land. And then also down here, part of Spirit Mountain is a Grapevine Canyon. So I'm going to talk about this area now. So the Spirit Mountain is Avi Kwa Ame in the Mojave language. And you can see this glorious mountain from Searchlight, from Laughlin, down by Needles, over in the Mojave Preserve in California, and across the river in Arizona. Avi Kwa Ame and its surrounding landscape are sacred land that is revered by 12 different Southwestern Native American tribes. And it's, in fact, the place of creation for the 10 human language speaking tribes, and that includes the Mojave tribe. The Mojave tribe in particular, which by the way is divided into two different tribes at this point. There's the Colorado River tribes that are a little farther to the south, that reservation, and then who we've mostly been dealing with and who have more of a direct relationship geographically to Avi Kwa Ame is the Fort Mojave Indian tribe. For them, this is their place of creation, the place where humans and plants and animals and everything came into being by their creator. And the Mojave in this creation story were charged by their creator to stay in this landscape forever to protect it from harm. All of the other peoples created were asked to migrate and scatter around the land that had been created, but the Mojave were asked to stay here. And I think that is so powerful in the unfolding of this story, because I think back to the history of the Mojave people and the American expansion and the conflicts between this tribe and settlers and the US government. And from the Mojave perspective, they were being told to leave and they could not, because they were charged to stay and protect this mountain and this river and this landscape. I think that's really powerful. And of course, that story exists elsewhere in the country, throughout the country, and throughout the Americas, and people haven't always been able to stay. So it's very special that the Mojave and the other human tribes are still here. All of these tribes, all the human tribes, and then in addition, this is sacred space to the Hopi people and the Chemehuevi Southern Paiute people. And all of these tribes are still with us. They're still alive and well and practicing their culture and revering this landscape. And that's something else I've been learning along the way as I discuss this with people, is a lot of times people refer to these native tribes and their relationship to the landscape as if they're all in the past. And that's just not the case here, which is great. And we need to honor that. And we're trying to honor that in the landscape. This creation story, it influences everything within the culture of the Mojave. This creation story taught them how to live, taught them how to die. It influenced their funeral rites, their birth rituals, their relationship with plants and animals, their visual and performing arts traditions, the stories, the culture, and everyday life are all influenced by this particular landscape. And when you go, if you have ever had the opportunity to go through the Spirit Mountain Pass there on Christmas Tree Pass and take a look at this grand landscape with these spires, this picture is beautiful but doesn't do justice to how steep and imposing and magical and foreboding and awesome these rock formations are. You will also feel that this is a very special place, and one in which at the top of the mountain, it doesn't feel like a mountain that humans might, like, oh yes, that's totally where humans belong. It definitely feels more like a place where gods belong. And another wonderful place to go that's already protected on the west side of the mountain is the Grapevine Canyon area, which is full of beautiful petroglyphs, some of the densest petroglyphs, a really great petroglyph site here in southern Nevada. And this area really speaks to this long history of this particular area as a sacred space. So definitely check that out as well as part of your trip to Avi Kwa Ame. And then this is the view from the west side of the mountain, where there are many beautiful pine trees, juniper trees, and that's where the name Christmas Tree Pass comes from. And during the mining era, a lot of the pine trees got harvested from here and other nearby mountains. And I'd love to tell you a story about the cultural conflict at Christmas Tree Pass with a holiday tradition of decorating these trees. But I'll save that for the end if we have time and anyone's curious. So we've been down here in the south, and then if we go to this west side of the proposed monument area, we see where the historic Walking Box Ranch is, and then let's take a look at some of the other things, the Wee Thump Wilderness, and then the Crescent Peak area. And also there are beautiful views of the Castle Peaks and Castle Mountains from this area of the monument. So in the Wee Thump Wilderness, this is part of the densest Joshua tree forest in the world. It's home to Nevada's largest Joshua tree, and Wee Thump in Paiute means ancient ones. Some of these yucca are 600 to over 1,000 years old. So they really are ancient. And the creosote bushes, the lichens, and the soil biocrust are much older, sometimes up to 10,000 years old. So I like to think of this area more as an old growth forest than a desert, landscape where things are more transient, less wilderness, more old growth forest, ancient ones. And then nearby, right in sight of the Weethump Wilderness area, is Crescent Peak. And this is a historic mining district that was linked to Searchlight just a few miles away. In the late 1800s, turquoise was discovered here. And it was actually discovered in mines that had been once worked by ancestral Puebloan peoples. And they were rediscovered during this late Victorian era. That ancestral Puebloan era is from like 850 to 1250. So, 1,000 years ago, the same culture that was building all the pueblos across the Southwest, that had the Chaco Canyon center, that was linked to all of these different places, was linked here to Crescent Peak and this Avi Kwa Ame area. And that's pretty cool. And we know that because in Chaco Canyon, they have done tests on the turquoise that has been found there, and they can pinpoint exactly which mines across the Southwest the turquoise came from. So in the early 1900s, this was being remined, and some of that turquoise actually went to the Tiffany Jewelry Company to be sold and made into beautiful jewelry. Also in this landscape, you can see the Castle Peaks there in the background. We have Sonoran grasslands. We have all kinds of birds, one of the densest population of eagles and eagle nests in southern Nevada, a really healthy desert tortoise population. And we have made a lot of efforts so far to keep these lands intact. Like I said, some of them have some level of protection, but the parts that have been of concern have been these donut areas. And the protection game, let's say, of trying to have our landscape and its treasures remain intact really ramped up about 15 years ago. That was when the first industrial energy project came to town in the Searchlight area, and that was Searchlight Energy. This project that was put together by Duke Energy, a Texas company, it had a very aggressive proposal to surround the town of Searchlight entirely in every direction, 360 degrees, with wind turbines that were 428 feet tall. And this is actually a map. I couldn't quite find where I put the original proposal where it was on all sides, but this was their revised proposal. But just imagine the first one was 200, and they went all the way around. And within the Searchlight Township, so not out there in the larger BLM area, but in our area reserved for our township, that is also BLM land. It was not part of the ACEC critical environmental concern area. And just to give you some context, the building codes for our town say that we can't build more than 40 feet high. But this proposal said, let's toll, no problem, whole town of people. Let's build things that are over 400 feet high. So as you can imagine, our town was not super interested in that. We prefer to see the landscape that we moved there for or have stayed there for. Searchlight has economically taken some hits over the years, especially with that ACEC designation and some other desert tortoise protections that happened in the 80s and 90s that ended ranching on public lands, and it ended mining claim leases, the unpatented claims on the public lands. So a lot of the economic opportunities of the past had dried up. So this was not fun for anybody. And during the public meetings, the company representatives described our town and the landscape basically as a wasteland. And one representative declared when he was asked, about the ecological ramifications of putting these windmills in, he said, "There's nothing out there to protect." So that project went through in spite of the Searchlight Town Council's advisory boards voting unanimously against it. And we fought for a number of years. We banded together in our community with the tribal communities, conservation groups like Basin and Range Watch, and we publicly protested, spoke out at meetings, wrote a lot of letters, all that stuff. And ultimately, even though this project was greenlighted by the BLM, a tribal member, one of our residents, and someone from Basin and Range Watch sued the BLM over their environmental impact statement and some lack of thoroughness there. And they actually won. And this is the first time that a court decision about an environmental impact statement actually stopped an energy project from happening. So we got pretty excited about that because we were not excited about being treated like a place that you could just ramrod because maybe we didn't have the resources to stand up for ourselves. At the same time, concurrently, oh, by the way, this is another beautiful image and just a quote from the Palm Springs Desert Sun about this being the first federally approved renewable energy project that was conclusively defeated by concerns over its ecosystem impacts. Very cool. Okay, so concurrently to this, we have this Culling Energy project that rears its head, and it's proposed for the Crescent Peak area that's right over there right next to Walking Box Ranch, We Thump Wilderness, and that beautiful Joshua Tree forest. So we rallied again, we did all the things, and the BLM at this point was already starting to change its view because of all of the new research that had come to light, because of all the protesting and many other reasons. They rejected this proposal several times over the years, and they continue to reject it today. They've given it its lowest possible priority. And this project is still on the books right now for multiple donut hole areas within this landscape. And it would put in 70 miles of new transmission roads. And the current plan is 68 turbines that are 760 feet tall, which is usually reserved just for on the ocean, not even on land. So just a fun idea here. This is the Nevada's largest Joshua Tree, and to the right is one of these turbines. So it takes 32 of Nevada's largest Joshua trees, which is to create one. And this tiny little blip is a 6-foot person. So these things are massive. On the upside, these projects have really brought our community together, and multiple communities, the rural communities in the Avi Kwa Ame area, the Fort Mojave community, the other tribal communities that hold this land sacred, and Laughlin, Boulder City, Henderson, Las Vegas, Clark County. Everybody is now recognizing the value of these lands. And people were asking themselves, how can we actually protect this landscape better as a whole? fill in those donut hole areas and manage everything together, and also have the communities, the tribal communities and the gateway communities have a seat at the table in how these lands are managed. And that is, excitingly, this Avi Kwa Ame National Monument proposal that would protect almost 450,000 acres. And this area would be managed as a whole by the BLM, with an advisory board of tribal members and local residents and outdoor recreation interests, creating an oversight committee, which would be great. And in protecting it, it would also basically keep this area exactly the same as it is now, maintained with all its recreational opportunities, including the camping and hiking and off-highway vehicle use, all the back roads that are there now, and hunting and all the good stuff. So as close to as humanly possible in a changing world to keeping this landscape open for the future is pretty exciting. So this is a lot. There's so much story here. I became involved in the monument story about just right at the start of 2021. I knew it was coming, and then I was asked if I might be interested in speaking to other Searchlight residents and organizing the town of Searchlight in this effort. And other people already knew this was coming as well. It wasn't a shock because we were, and still are, trying to protect this land from industrial projects. But one of the things that happened to me was I realized very quickly that I need to do a whole lot of research on this subject beyond what the conservation group partners were telling me. And I had to really understand things like land designations and politics and, examples like Gold Butte of BLM monuments that are recently designated. Because I don't want to come to all my neighbors and say, this is a great plan, this is going to solve all of our problems, if I don't know what I'm talking about. So we did it together. What we did was we got together in small groups and we all talked about it. And we talked about what people's fears were. We talked about what, where we thought the map should be. We got a proposed map. We talked about trust in the government. We talked about all the different things. And as we talked about it, we all became more comfortable with it. And, I went door to door with friends and other Searchlight residents. And we were this, and still are, this group of people from all different walks of life and political backgrounds. But we all would rather see this landscape that we love intact and healthy and enjoyable for the future than cut up into little pieces. So it was very fascinating to see everybody get on board with this.
Good girl. Good girl.
I see we have somebody that has their not muted. So if you are not muted, please get on mute there. With our community dialogue and participation, we not only had Searchlight sign on through our town advisory board in promoting the monument idea, but also we added another almost 70,000 acres to the map so that we could manage this area as a whole. So that was pretty exciting. And now that we are in the process of, this was actually a bill in Congress now, it's been proposed by Dean Atitis earlier this year. So we've spent this year and last year with this proposal. Every city or city or town like Searchlight has signed on to it with their council. So Laughlin, Boulder City, Henderson, and Searchlight. And it's very exciting that we have all of this lined up. And we have had to trust, Searchlight's had to trust, and I'm sure that the communities in Gold Butte have gone through this and are going through this as well. We've had to trust this idea. We've had to trust that anybody else will pay attention to this idea. And this is coming from such a small town. We earlier in my lifetime, Searchlight was probably 1,000 residents, permanent residents, and now it's down to 300 or 400 permanent residents. And then the monument area and periphery probably have another 1,000 or so part-time residents, with Calnaberry and over there at Cottonwood Cove, and places like that, Palm Gardens. So lots of people do live here, but it's a small amount of people who normally feel rather disenfranchised from the government and not like their voice is heard and taken seriously very often. So we're in this wonderful era of big surprise. Look, people are paying attention to this and writing articles about this, and now it's in Congress. This is amazing. And scary and new. And so we're in this period of trust and trying to embrace this new identity that we do have these beautiful resources that other people also think are special, and that we have the ability to share them, and that the town also of Searchlight and other adjacent communities can become more of stewards of this land and interface with the public and visitors. So how do we engage our community and envision this new identity for ourselves and our landscape? And for me and my friends, that's been through creativity and celebrating what we have and getting the word out that it's pretty great. So that led to this Spirit of the Land art exhibition. A Las Vegas curator, Checo Salgado, who I believe has done some work for Gold Butte as well. He approached myself and Mystery Ranch collaborator, Michaela Whitmore, in 2021 and said, can we have the possibility of an art show that honors Avi Kwa Ame? And we jumped on board with that. And over 60 artists, musicians, and dancers, over a third of them who are from local Native communities, brought the creativity to this exhibition, Spirit of the Land. And that is currently at the Barrick Museum, and this is its last week. And it also appeared simultaneously, but the shows are over now, in Searchlight at the Community Center and at the Laughlin Library. And we were especially excited to have 20 members of the Fort Mojave tribe add their voices to the mix, and more singers and dancers. And they shared their stories of how their art form, which you can see in some of it in this picture in the lower part of the screen, how their visual art traditions and art forms are directly related to that Avi Kwa Ame landscape, which was pretty cool. It was also a big leap of faith for the tribe to participate and have tribal artists participate in this show, because first of all, tribal artists don't always get invited to participate in the same way as other artists. And also the work they chose to share with us is work that they do not usually loan out or have put in museums. So it was very special that they were sharing. And it's part of this process of trust and sharing of what's special about our area that is having to happen to all of us in order to try to protect it. You can still catch the Barrick Museum exhibition, and the closing reception is this Friday. then Saturday is the last day of the exhibition. At the closing reception at 6:30 p.m. this Friday, we are having a Stories of Avi Kwa Ame storytelling event with 5 different speakers. And we're also having a community postcard writing event. And one of the most exciting parts of this Spirit of the Land outreach has been to get the community involved. We had 200 entries from people in the community who, and some of you are here tonight, I believe, who like this region, have ties, have beautiful memories of this region, and have a beautiful picture, and then sent in your picture of what's special of Avi Kwa Ame. And these were in all 3 exhibitions. And then we also made postcards out of them. And there's also an online exhibition you can see if you're curious. What is great about this is that we're using these postcards to send out to our representatives of the area. And I am going as part of a coalition, kind of a delegation of people from the area to Washington, D.C. next week, and meeting with members of Congress and White House staff. And so now is the perfect time for anyone to go to the barrack in this last week and send some postcards about Avi Kwa Ame. Hint, hint. So we're thinking big and we're thinking creatively, and we're trying to get the community involved and each other involved and people outside of the community involved for the first time, and welcome them to our area and show them what's special. And that hasn't just culminated in arts events, but also back at the Mystery Ranch, a lot of science has been going on. And in the recent years, we've really ramped that up. So some of the things we're doing are collaborating in the Joshua Tree Genome Project, which is measuring Joshua Tree resilience in this era of climate change throughout the entire distribution of the eastern and western species of Joshua trees. We're also restoring habitat with ecology clubs from local colleges. We're creating a salvation garden. You can see the start of that in the lower middle image. This is a garden, it's a restoration garden for our property, but also it features plants from other restoration projects, whether they're BLM plants that have been saved from destruction as land gets industrialized or used for some other way, or plants from, like this Joshua tree came from the Castle Mountains mining venture and over there in the monument in California. And it's part of a relocation project for those plants as they get in the way of the mining machinery. We're also finding new species of plants and animals out there with researchers. So some of that is fun and ongoing. And this desert purple sage, Salvia dorii, in the right-hand corner, that's blooming white, is an example of that. And then we're also working on water and this mega drought. And we have a historic wildlife pond on the property. And we are in the midst of renovating this to be more like Grapevine Canyon, one of the natural springs of the area. And we're also recording the animals that are there using it, like proof of their existence in this landscape where we know our actions have consequences for the land and the plants and animals, but we often don't get to see these animals actually inhabiting the landscape ourselves. So one thing we're really hoping to collaborate with scientists and nonprofits within the coming year is to have a streaming webcam here at the pond and make that available on the internet so that anyone can access it, which will be fun to have a live webcam in the area. But also there's a lot more research that needs to be done in how animals are handling these extreme temperature spells and the mega drought. How much more water do they need when the temperature rises above a certain threshold that they are not used to? So that's exciting stuff too. And lastly, my biggest takeaway through this process is how much we have all had to share what we have in order to protect it for the future. And again, that we have to trust each other. And that trust has come from taking the time to bring everyone on board equally, not judge each other for our perceived differences at first, and spend the time with each other, listening and taking each other's concerns seriously. And the best kinds of sharing that have been fun to engage in with our communities and the public and the world in general have been these creative ones. So we've come way farther in a couple years, a year and a half of actively campaigning and forming this proposal and then taking it to Congress than I ever thought possible when it started. But I know from watching you guys that the real work starts when that designation happens. And so thanks for taking the time to share this with me tonight. And let me introduce you to Avi Kwa Ame. And I'm very inspired by the work that you all do there at Gold Butte. So I hope that this is the start of a new friendship between all of us. Thanks so much.
Kim, thank you so much. That was wonderful. I really appreciate it. We do have a few minutes left for question and answers. If anyone would like, I do see one in the chat from David. What is the status of the congressional bill for monument designation?
Yeah, David. So it's in there. It is getting explored by committee in the House of Representatives right now. But honestly, with the elections coming up, nothing's going to move on this until after the elections. But that doesn't mean that nothing will happen in this congressional cycle before whoever is elected for the next term comes in. Most of national monuments get signed through the Antiquities Act rather than Congress. So it's over 80% of national monuments are signed by presidential proclamation. But they have to go to Congress and be introduced by a representative in order to be considered. So right now we're at this fun part where it's there, all the ducks are in a row, and now we're having all of the, tying everything together with a little bow, working out all the kinks and the details, and, absolute certainty, and hoping that this will be designated perhaps this year, perhaps next year. Not up to us at this point, but we've taken this really far, and everybody feels really good about it. And it's frankly amazing that we have had so much consensus with the different communities, and that we've taken this far easily.
Great, thank you, Kim.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any questions? You're welcome to ask them verbally at this time if you'd unmute your microphone. We just do that during the presentation so everyone can hear, but if you have a question, please feel free at this point.
Yes, Jim.
Hey, Kim, were you going to tell us a story about cultural conflict at Christmas Tree Pass?
Well, for you, absolutely.
It's something near and dear to my heart.
Do you know about that? Have you been up there and seen that said cultural conflict? I
risked my life to get lights down out of trees and off of cliffs.
Yes. So, so Christmas Tree Pass has this name, Christmas Tree Pass, after the trees. And in the, some people say late 70s, some people say 80s, some time back, people who were out there camping, enjoying that beautiful mountaintop, got the idea that we should start to put Christmas tree ornaments and holiday ornaments on these juniper trees and pine trees, if they can find them, in Christmas Tree Pass. And what started as possibly people's innocent and fun camping family experiences snowballed into craziness, where the holiday ornaments never left with the people when they were done with their camping trip, and they stayed on those trees year round. And people came and still come year round to put those ornaments on the trees. Alan O'Neill, the former superintendent of Lake Mead National Recreation Area, he told me that in the heyday, when they first just had to tackle this problem, the Park Service and volunteer groups, that there were 800 trees at once that were covered. And it's ongoing. Now it's kind of wonderful because there are all of these conservation groups that have volunteer days after the holidays that go out there and clean the trees. There are also off-highway vehicle groups that go out there, make an ATV day of it, and clean all of that stuff up. But there's no way to clean it all up because it's decomposing, it's getting plastics and metals and shiny things all over the landscape and being ingested by the creatures that live there that are looking for food during a drought. So it's really a terrible idea for everyone. And especially because this area is the sacred creation landscape to all of these Native American tribes. It's been a source of so much distress for the Fort Mojave tribal members in particular, because tribal members will go out there and try to take things down, and they've reported being confronted by people in a hostile manner when they go out there to try to take down that trash. So one of the things we've been trying to do as we bring light to this landscape is that particular area is not protected. It's in that BLM donut hole area. And so part of our Spirit of the Land art exhibition has a massive installation that is called Spirit Mountain Depicted in Holiday Trash. And it is a depiction of the mountain in holiday trash that had been collected by all of the artists going out there to research over the last year, and as well as bags and bags of trash that we were gifted from the conservation groups that were going out there in cleanup days. And it's just a small percentage of 1 year's trash that's there at the Barrick Museum, but it's a huge, huge amount. So that's been really great because we've gotten some newspaper articles about it and some press paying attention to that problem in particular, because I sincerely think that the people who go out there, they are not educated enough. They don't know that it's harming the very plants and animals that they are enjoying in that landscape, and they don't think about it. So they're maybe not going to read a conservation article or an environmental article in the newspaper, but maybe they'll come across it in some other way. So the more creatively we tackle these issues and just talk about them, like this has been an issue that Searchlight, Laughlin, and the Fort Mojave tribe have had difficulty talking about because they've been afraid of each other in the past. And so because we've built up this trust where we can work together on these other things, we're starting to communicate better and listen to what's important. So I have hope that that we can lessen the great holiday trash debacle of Christmas Tree Pass. Thank you for letting me tell that story there, Daniel. Jim, sorry.
Does anyone else have any questions for Kim?
Well, I hope you guys get out there if you haven't been out there before. And please feel free to reach out to somebody at the Avi Kwa Ame, Honor Avi Kwa Ame website, or reach out to me if you have any questions about it. And yeah, thank you so much for having me here.
Kim, thank you. That was great. We really appreciate it. And good luck with your monument. I think people want to do the right thing. They just need a little push.
That's right. I agree too. And yeah, please give me advice and ideas as you think of them, you people farther along in this process.
Well, it takes a village for sure. So
yeah, it does.
Thank you very much. Thanks for everyone. Thanks to everyone for coming this evening. And we will see you next month. Kim, thank you. And you have a good evening. Okay.
Thanks, you too.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.